Okay, wait. Why do you wear the horns? You let a child command you.
You do well to respect the boy. This is his kingdom.
Right. What was your Nexus event, Your Majesty?
I killed Thor.
Derek.
And I'm Noah. You're listening to A Bite Of,
where we take our current favorite pop culture obsession and enjoy it one nibble at a time.
Don't know why I said it that way.
It was like a little birdie.
Yes, so welcome to the penultimate episode of Loki. We're almost there. And it's been quite a journey.
We've been all through time. Sacred timeline, branches of the timeline, apocalypses of the timeline.
And now we're going into a mystery of timelines.
Maybe a place where the timeline doesn't even exist.
So, before we get into it, make sure you're following us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at A Bite of Pod. And if you like our show and you've been following us through all of these different properties that we've been covering, we have a Patreon where you can support us. You get to pick an episode.
Bonus.
Yeah. And then also make sure you leave that rating and review on Apple Podcasts, on our website, or on Podchaser or Google. Wherever you can leave that rating.
Look how many options there are. Any of them.
There's
would
lots
be delightful.
of them. We are also on Apple subscriptions now, so our bonus episodes are going to start going on there. You don't have to go on Patreon to support us and also get bonus episodes if that's just what you want. If you don't want some free merch, just Apple subscriptions is right there.
Your little thumb can do a one clicky click. You'll be good to go. All right, so let's take a look back at Loki episode 4, the Nexus event. While waiting for their doom on Lamentis, Loki and Sylvie have a moment that sets off a branch in the timeline. Mm-hmm. They are brought into the TVA. Loki has a repetitive run-in with Lady Sif in a time cell, and Hunter B-15 reflects on being enchanted by Sylvie at the Roxcart apocalypse. Mobius gets suspicious of Renslayer and nabs her tempad. He is pruned, and Loki and Sylvie are brought in front of the Timekeepers. There, the Triad's animatronic heads fall to the floor, and Loki is pruned as well. He wakes up in a desolate wasteland where he is greeted by 4 variant Lokis.
You like writing those, don't you?
Oh, they're so fun. They're quippy, they're mysterious. It's some information, but not giving it all away. The art of the summary. You can come to my TED Talk next week. Comment below. Thank you very much.
All right, so spoiler warning. From here on out, we're talking about the 5th episode, the penultimate episode of Loki. We're almost there. We're almost at the finish line. I have no freaking idea how this is going to end because it seems like there's so much more that needs to happen. Here we go.
All right, so let us officially take a bite of Loki, episode 5, Journey into Mystery.
So right there, the title. And for people that either didn't listen to our Before Loki episode before the show came out, the title itself, Journey into Mystery, is pretty much the start of it all for Norse mythology and Marvel Comics. So it actually premiered in the 60s. And Thor himself first appeared in Journey into Mystery number 83, and then Loki shortly thereafter. So if it wasn't for Journey into Mystery comics, we wouldn't have Loki and Thor and all of these wonderful stories.
Well, it must be Easter, because that right there's an egg. And this whole episode,
oh my God.
Bam, 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 bam.
There's so many Easter eggs in this episode that it's more of just like in the background, but there's a lot.
It kind of feels like, remember all those like sort of odd things that they tried over the years? Well, now they're in the void. They've been pruned.
Pretty much, and different iterations too, so you really have to keep your eye out. This to me felt like most of the episodes of WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we didn't really have many Easter eggs in Loki, which, you know, I gotta appreciate a little bit. Like, it's fun to see them, but a lot of times it's like, if it doesn't make sense, why have it in there?
Mm-hmm.
You know, or it was just like, oh, here's the wizard. You know, just a vase that looks like the wizard, but he doesn't matter in anything that we're talking about. So it is interesting, and I think the void was the perfect opportunity to have all this stuff in there. You know? So we're going to pick up at the TVA. I know this episode kind of opens with an opening of the void, but we're going to talk about Renslayer and Sylvie first, because That's where a chunk of the beginning of the episode starts anyway.
Yeah, and don't forget about the twisty-turny intro through the golden elevator.
That happened in the
on
last
floor.
episode too, so it's pretty
Lots
cool.
of twisty-turny stuff.
And I know from just the trailer for the show, there's another one that happens where like Loki's walking through a purpley hallway.
Ooh.
Pretty sure that he's in that castle or whatever that they're going to. So
Hold on to your seatbelts, kids. We're going upside down again.
So at the TVA, Sylvie wants Renslayer to spill those beans. But the TVA judge claims that she's in the dark just as much as Sylvie is. So she's like, I don't know who's running this thing. I'm just as upset as you are that they're androids. Liar.
Lies.
I mean, she's probably telling the truth, like she doesn't actually know, but I mean, she's just going about it in such a weird way.
Yeah. Well, first of all, question right off the bat. When we first left them, Sylvie had the spiky end of a baton up to Renslayer's throat in the timekeeper room, elevator, chamber, and now they're in some courtroom. When did they get there?
I mean, time.
Temp pad
space.
fall through?
Probably. She probably did use the temp pad because she has it with her. So, I mean, she might have just opened a door.
All right, I guess.
I don't know why they would need to leave, but
right,
whatever.
that's what I understand. I mean, stay amongst the mayhem. I don't know. Look who's behind the controlling animatronic heads. But I also think it is sort of funny that like Renslayer's like, I can help you if you trust me. What? Why?
Yeah, I mean, well, also, Sylvie's not stupid. She
No.
knows. Yeah, so Renslayer does explain here how, the void and more of how the timeline works a little bit. She reveals that a branch timeline, they're not reset necessarily. They're just more transferred to a place where they can't continue growing. And that's the void.
Right.
Somewhere at the end of time, nothing ever comes back from the void. She says, but she's willing to help Sylvie. She wants to know who's lying to her, is what she says constantly, which I guess is fine, but I don't know. It's just so weird. It's like, but you're serving it so well.
Right. And you love withholding those rules, right? She's very much like she's like, these are the rules we abide by and everybody must follow them, even though it turns out it's all fake, but we still must follow the rules.
Yeah, I wonder how long she's been doing this, because if it was like, okay, I want to find out who's doing this, so I'm just going to play the part, but it's like, how long are you going to play that part? Like, you were only talking to these animatronic, Chuck E. Cheese characters this whole time, so...
Yeah, what does she always say? She says, it's complicated whenever somebody asks her about the TVA, but it's like, I don't know. It seems like you're just there to get what you want, but you don't care what's happening to anybody else.
Yeah, and if she didn't know that the timekeepers weren't real necessarily, she didn't really act like she was surprised.
No.
It's like she mentions it, but she's not like, oh my God, I thought they were real.
Yeah, there were no exclamations. There were no jaw dropping. There were no clutching the pearls. She was like, cool.
Yeah, let's work together, I guess, question mark.
Liar and Renslayer. Liar.
So Renslayer and Sylvie use Miss Minutes to help them with their new plan. Sylvie then realizes that you can't create a next event in the void, which means, you can't really necessarily find where Loki's at or anything, which means they must go to the end of time to save Loki. Renslayer plays along, but she's really just stalling for time as Miss Minutes looks for files, which is code for color guards.
Exactly.
But who is Miss Minutes? Like, I mean, I hope we find out at this point, but it is interesting that she knows what Renslayer's doing, or at least now she knows maybe about Renslayer not really believing in everything, but wants to find out the truth. But she's helping Renslayer, so I don't know if Miss Minutes is just helping her because she's like, well, I work for the same thing too, and I'm supposed to do the right thing, and Renslayer's technically not doing the wrong thing. But it's just interesting because I think this one is like the first time we saw Miss Minutes have a little bit of a personality. Like, she looked a little worried at some points, or like sneaky, and I'm so curious about Miss Minutes. Maybe we'll never know.
I feel completely betrayed by Miss Minutes because I thought she was on our side, but it turns out she's just one of the TVA's persons.
Purple?
Presons? Orange.
Jeez.
But that's the thing. It's like, so she is sort of this lifelike humanoid computer program. But yet she
Sure.
can react and think and knows what people are doing.
She's like an AI, but I just don't know the consciousness
You
level
can
of
never
her.
trust an AI. If there's one thing science fiction has taught us is that AIs will turn their backs on you.
It's very true. Look at the Alien series. I mean, their androids were not great.
Not great, y'all. So I don't know about that Miss Minutes, but my theory still stands that she is the head of the TVA and is the one controlling all of this.
I really don't want that to be a thing. I know, like, we joke about it, but it just would not make sense. I mean, having this, southern sounding, hologram clock be no.
She's another Loki variant that's been controlling this entire thing.
I mean, that would be funny, but
right? She magics herself. She conjures herself into her full body.
That's a good point. I swear, if there's a Loki variant behind all this, I'm not going to be happy. I'm just going to say, like, this episode gave me my fill of Lokis. Like, okay, we've seen a bunch of different Lokis.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool, but like, this whole thing could not be just because of a Loki. Like, I feel like Loki's not that good.
It's interesting. Like, we're waiting for the reveal of the big bad, right? And like, if you think of WandaVision, we kept waiting for the Mephisto reveal. We kept waiting for some other time mischief thing to happen. But it turns out it was Agatha all along. She was always there, right? So even in Falcon and Winter Soldier, our enemies, our villains were always there. So are we finally going to get that big reveal, or is it going to be a person that was always there?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like there's only 3 of these shows so far, and there's always like that one who is the person behind everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Power Broker was in Falcon and Winter Soldier, which we all kind of knew.
Yeah, we figured that out like episode 2.
Yeah, which we weren't sure, and then when everybody found out, and I know we were like, okay.
We said thumbs down.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see more of Sharon Carter as Power Broker, so we'll see. Agatha was a great surprise.
Oh, heck
We
yeah.
all knew that she was Agatha Harkness. We didn't know if she was going to be good. What was the extent? So this one is like, we have absolutely no idea. I feel like they keep pointing to Kang, and everybody keeps talking about Kang the Conqueror, and this episode really pointed to Kang,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't trust them, and I feel like we've been baited and switched before.
Because, right, like Renslayer has ties to Kang the Conqueror in the comics. So, but it's weird. So it's like, if he's the head of the TVA, why would she need to infiltrate the TVA for the person that she already has ties to?
Right. I mean, this could possibly be the start of their ties.
Okay.
I mean, if she finds out about Kang and why he does it, and if she agrees with it, then she could go along with it. Who knows? I don't think at this moment she knows Kang exists, or if Kang is behind this.
Gotcha. She's just always been trying to track him down, and maybe it led her to the TVA.
Yeah. So at this point, Sylvie is cornered. She prunes herself, taking a temp pad with her, which is pretty clever because she also ends up in the void, because she learned from Renslayer that, hey, if you prune yourself, you don't necessarily die. You just go into this like dumping ground of crap.
Prune equals dump. I mean, that's real life.
So we pick up in the void, a desolate and dreary wasteland where Loki is now stuck. In the opening shot of the void, we see a completely ravaged cityscape, which includes the most familiar building in the MCU's NYC, Stark Tower. But if you look more closely, you notice that it doesn't have Stark on it. Instead, it has QENG. In the comics, Kang
the Conqueror
Enterprises bought the tower from Tony Stark in 2015's all-new, all-different Avengers #1. The CEO of Kang was also known as Mr. Griffin, a man ultimately revealed to be one of the many, 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 many identities of Kang the Conqueror. So, yes, it's pointing a little bit more towards Kang, or unless this is just an Easter egg, but we have more coming up. And that's one thing to realize about Kang, is that he has different identities throughout time, so he could have been here this entire time as well, and we wouldn't have known it. Maybe Mobius is Kang.
No. Well, now I'm Kang the Confused.
So Loki is hanging out with his other Loki variants, and then we see the smoke monster from Lost in all its glory.
And it's purpley and lightning. Also, don't forget, we have another glorious Loki hair flip in this moment. He gets off from the ground. His head seems to swing back between his legs, comes up with a wind known as the mightiest one, and his hair falls perfectly in place.
You're always on the lookout for those.
I love a Loki hair flip. I want there to be a Loki hair flip compilation. Just like bam, bam, flip, 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 flip. So internet, get on it.
There is one. I actually saw it yesterday.
Oh.
Yeah. So Loki is walking with these other variants, and they're walking away from the giant smoke monster known as Alioth, or I should say cloud. It's more of a gas. Anyway.
Dragon?
No.
Giant turtle. Stephen King's giant turtle.
Why would you do that? They didn't put it in the fucking movie. Why? It's not going to be here. Classic Loki tells him that Alioth is a living tempest. They're in the shark tank, and Alioth is the shark. All the other Lokis were arrested and pruned as well, is what we find out. Obviously, because if they're in the void, that's how they got there. We see throughout this episode that things just kind of drop after they get pruned into this time and space. So I'm curious if just all of New York was reset.
It was the wrong Avengers. Get him out of here. How many pruning sticks do you have to use? Or how big was the time capsule thing?
The reset charges.
Reset chargers.
Why? No, charges.
Listen, chargers. Charge.
God.
Listen, they haven't used one in a while. Temp pads are the it thing right now. If you don't have a temp pad, you can't be part of the TVA.
Every single time you've always forgotten the name.
The Pokemon capsules.
God. So as they're walking away from Alioth, they're kind of lollygagging a little bit because Loki is like, what the hell is going on? Kid Loki tells him, we need to hurry up and go. And Loki wonders why Kid Loki is wearing the horns and why he gets so much importance. Well, he killed Thor. That's what we find out, which is kind of sad because, I mean, Kid Loki in the comics isn't necessarily this evil. Like, he wouldn't kill Thor unless it was like the possessed older version of Kid Loki. But it was interesting to see this dark version of Kid Loki in here. I wasn't expecting it.
So, right. I have a couple of questions. So, did Kid Loki kill Kid Thor, or did he kill an older Thor?
No, he had to have killed Kid Thor.
As children on the playground of Asgard?
Yeah, it reminds me of a scene in Thor Ragnarok where they have, so Bruce Banner, Valkyrie, and Thor have Loki tied up, and they're kind of off to the side, not too far, and they're talking about what to do with Loki, and he can hear everything they're saying, and they're like, we should kill him, and Thor's like, yeah, that's a good plan. He's tried to kill me many times. There was one time when we were a kid, he turned into a snake, and he knows I don't like snakes, and I got terrified, and he turned into a snake, and he's like, it was funny. It's like, that's how he explains it too. So it's like, was that the thing that happened? Like, he was like 8 or 9 and he turned into a snake and then killed Thor.
That seems like a little lighter than saying he took a dagger to his throat as a child.
I mean, he did have that fancy dagger, so I'm
pretty sure. He sure did. I have another question.
Okay.
What is up with these little round chunky bird things that are bebopping around that look like misfits of Kevin from Up?
Yeah, I have no idea. It's. I think it's just like a sci-fi weird fantasy thing that they threw in here because also they were probably never meant to exist because it looks like a whole gaggle of them.
Right. That's exactly why they were pruned, right? Yeah. Because they look like abominations with their tiny circle heads.
Kind of cute. They just don't have any facial features.
Yeah, but they end up eating one later on.
Well, oh, that's
what they're roasting on the fire. That's how they survive.
Wow, okay, well, that's why they're there.
Yeah, for sustenance.
I didn't
also,
realize.
just one more thing. Alligator Loki is the best thing that was ever created and deserves its own spinoff. Every cutaway shot of Alligator Loki was my favorite thing.
They did do some funny cutaway, like editing in this
timing
episode.
Was perfect of all of them.
I really liked it. So the 4 Lokis head to their hideout away from Alioth. As they climb into their hideout, the camera pans down to reveal Throg, trapped and frustratingly jumping for Mjolnir. Throg is essentially Thor in frog form, like how Loki is like in alligator form. It's right there. If you look a little closer, you'll actually see a metal plate that says T365, an issue number from the Thor Volume 1 comics that denotes the first full appearance of Throg. So
there you go.
Mm-hmm,
he got his own little scene there.
Yeah. So our Loki, Classic Loki, Kid Loki, and Boastful Loki compare notes about what they did. Why were they pruned? A little bit of backstory on these guys. So true to his name, Boastful Loki claims he had all 6 Infinity Stones and vanquished Captain America and Iron Man. I mean,
Lies, fallacies.
Probably.
Boastful-ingness?
Alligator Loki jumps at Boastful Loki because he knows that he was lying.
In his pool.
Yeah. So the classic Loki says that he didn't use knives as they were silly and a mockery to magic in their full potential. So I did think that was interesting. So as you know, I always want Loki to do more magic because
Noah's pro magic.
that's what he does, and I love magical characters.
Heck
Doctor
yeah.
Strange is like one of my favorite comic book characters of all time.
Mm-hmm.
I want more magic. But I did think it was interesting that he was like, no, I don't use daggers. I use magic, which we will see later on. But it's cool to see that all of these different versions of Loki either use different weapons or go about things a different way. And it just shows that maybe that wasn't the best way because that's why they were pruned.
Right. And I think it's something to say about, like, if you're talking about Doctor Strange only uses his magic. He doesn't really have a weapon. And so, but Lokis are always trying to get to their point so fast to try and overthrow someone that they're going to use a physical object. So he's like, but it's just getting in your way. You're stepping over things that you're missing. If you just use your magic, because we're so powerful, you'd be in a better place.
Yeah, as again we see Loki in this episode, his tactic is always charge the villain strategy.
Mm-hmm.
It's always not the best strategy, and Sylvie always likes to point that out. So it does seem that maybe using a little bit more guile and trickery is probably the better way to go, especially if you're not a great fighter. Sylvie's probably the better fighter out of all of them,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to use what you got.
Also, we need to mention, I'm always looking at whatever they're consuming in these scenes. My Boku tangent a couple of episodes ago, we see Kid Loki enjoying a high C ecto cooler, which was out when we were kids, which apparently have been pruned because the world could not handle their greatness anymore.
Well, they were so successful.
That was like the most popular high C flavor ever, when Ghostbusters was barely even a thing anymore.
Yeah, I think it was like during their animated show or
It was
something
Slimer,
like that.
yeah.
It was, I mean, it is interesting to see that it was pruned. We also see like rocks of wine.
Oh yeah, Rocks Wine Box Wine had to be pruned because it was so terrible.
Or it was so delicious, just like the high C ectoplasm goo stuff.
Yeah, that I don't understand the high C, but box wine tends to have, you're right, maybe it was so delicious that that's what caused the apocalypse at
Have you ever
Rockstar.
had black box wine?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
We got that at the beginning of quarantine, remember?
It's delicious.
Finished it in a day.
Oh yeah, we did get that. Yeah. See, box wine could be great. No judgment. I mean, it's in a bag or comes in a glass bottle, whatever.
Rocks wine, box wine.
So we find out from classic Loki that, towards the end of his life, or what brought him here, he fooled Thanos with the projection, faked his death, and drifted into space. He then decided to remove himself from the equation, for he was just, caused destruction everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He realized, he was like, okay, the path I've been on, probably not great. But we see that this is, this Loki got all the way up to Infinity War Loki, the Loki that we know that died by the hands of Thanos. But this one escaped. Classic Loki lived a solitary life at the edge of space for a long, long, long time. But he got lonely, and when he tried to get off the planet, the TVA arrived. He tells the other Lokis that they're like the god of outcasts. They're one part to play. That's it. That's all they're supposed to be. They're just always supposed to be left in the dust, which is kind of sad because, it's not a great feeling to have.
Well, it also sort of feels like they have no control over their fate in a sense. They all, at some point or another, want power. So they're willing to kill whoever they have to kill to get that power.
Yeah.
But once they return to the people that they love, when they realize they don't want to be alone, that's when they're pruned. That's when they die, in MCU Loki's case. So it's really sad that at some point they want to be better. They want to be with the ones that they love, but they're not allowed to be.
I think in this scene, though, Loki didn't agree with them. When they're like, we're the god of outcasts, blah, blah, blah. We're always meant to just be, left in the dust and stuff like that. And I think Loki's newfound understanding about what you can do and you can actually change and everything, he didn't really believe that. And part of me feels like what kind of sucks is that maybe they feel that way because whoever obviously doesn't want Loki to do what he's supposed to do keeps pruning them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look, as far as all the people we saw in later when we see President Loki, I'm pretty sure most of those people are Lokis. Some of them are doing magic and stuff like that.
Right.
So it seems like a lot of Lokis keep getting pruned Also, where is everybody else?
Well, yeah, you're right. It does, the void really seems more like a Loki dumping ground
right,
than
exactly.
anything.
Yeah.
So I think, there is someone really keeping an eye on Lokis because those mischievous Lokis could really upset the quote unquote sacred timeline.
It's also sad that Loki, he was always meant to die by the hands of Thanos, which kind of sucks. Your classic Loki went the same way. But it's also pretty sad that when classic Loki wanted to rejoin the world, he was taken by the TVA.
Right.
It's like, oh.
It is interesting why, so the TVA, as long as he's far enough away from kind of creating anything, he's fine. But the second he heads back, they prune him.
Yeah, that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Again, probably just going on that path of whatever he was supposed to do, he's not supposed to do. Maybe the path that our current Loki is on is the path that he was always supposed to do. So, I don't know. Whoever is doing this does not like him. So Loki tries to come up with a plan. Loki pitches that they can kill Alioth if they work together. Loki is laughed off by them because obviously they've been there longer than him, so they know, like, okay, yeah, you want to go try to kill that giant purple cloud monster? Go ahead. Loki walks out of their protective hatch, or he more climbs out. Yeah, he can't walk out of a hatch. Again, another Lost reference. Huh. There's a hatch in Lost.
This one is just a love letter to Lost, this episode.
But he's then confronted by a dozen more of him and President Loki. One of them looks exactly like him, which was very weird because up until this moment, like we saw in those projections that there's Lokis that look like Tom Hiddleston, but not fully.
True.
And to see one that looks just like him, I was like, oh, okay, this is weird.
One of my personal favorites is Bike Handlebar Horn Loki.
Didn't like it.
I loved it. I thought it was so funny. It was like they were sitting there going, what looks like horns? I know. Crazy handlebars.
Well, they also did it with like hair like a million times also. Just stick with the horns. It looks great on an alligator. It will look great on anybody.
Everybody, let's all take a moment of admiration for Alligator Loki because we haven't in a couple of minutes. Oh, okay. Thank you.
So there's a lot of Lokis at this point. There was like 6 prior to meeting this like dozen of new Lokis. So I've had my fill of Lokis in the
That's a lot of Lokis.
Yeah. So inside, Boastful Loki boasts that he betrayed them. So he worked with President Loki to, rat them out with their hideout. But then turns out that all the people that were with President Loki also betrayed him. It's all
twisty-turny.
You can't have this many Lokis trying to work together. They're all going to just keep betraying each other. It's not going to work out. Alligator Loki jumps at President Loki and bites his hand off, and I want to say that scream.
The best Loki scream that has ever existed.
It's so funny.
Incredible.
I was surprised when that happened. Not the hand being bit off, whatever, because this President Loki literally does not matter. But that scream, I was like, oh, God.
It was so good.
How do you make that noise?
Hiddleston had to warm up the vocal cords for that one.
So this starts a fight. And while our Loki looks kind of unamused at the petty squabbles, he's not alone in that line of thinking because classic Loki conjures up an illusion and sneaks them away. And I did like this, if you pay attention, that in this illusion, Kid Loki has Alligator or Gator Loki, and he throws them on people, just like Get Help with Thor and Thor Ragnarok. He's like, yes. I'm not going to do Get Help. Let's do Get Help. And he throws Loki at the guards.
You're so right.
It's so funny. But I got to say, I was disappointed with President Loki because that's been like one of the images for the show, especially before it premiered. And I was so excited because that storyline's really interesting where Loki pretty much gained control of the United States in a terrible and twisty, presidential election cycle. Not worse than 2016's, but it was bad enough for Loki to become president. But, that's just like Marvel. They use these images to like, oh, people will know this or people will be interested in this, but it's really, it's for somebody to get their hand bit off.
Totally. Well, and I thought it was interesting because we have seen that scene a lot in a lot of the trailers, and little did we know that he was surrounded by other Lokis because those other Lokis looked just different enough that we didn't realize it was a bunch of them. So it sort of looked like President Loki, who I've been writing as Vote for Loki. It just sort of looked like he had henchmen.
Right.
So that was sort of clever. But for it to be just like a little one-off silly thing, I think is probably disappointing to some people.
Yeah. But again, we don't. It's not even about that Loki, so it's like I can't be totally disappointed. I was like, oh.
Noah wanted a political drama.
I thought, our Loki was going to be stuck in the void for a while because time might work differently there, and he became president of this desolate.
And then it becomes a West Wing type Marvel show.
I'm happy about that. West Wing come back in the form of a Marvel
Alice
show.
and Janney is also a Loki.
So as they escape, Kid Loki and Classic Loki talk about how whenever a Loki tries to fix themselves, they get sent here.
Yeah.
Which is pretty sad.
We cannot change. We're broken, they say.
Loki finally convinces Classic and Kid Loki to help him, but they will only get him to Alioth, nothing more. That's all they'll help him with. So, welcome to the Void, Sylvie. We're going to pick up where Sylvie comes into the Void. A pruned Sylvie appears in the Void and is immediately chased by Alioth. She had no downtime. Loki had a little bit of downtime, and other Lokis were able to find him, but Sylvie just gets dropped there, and she immediately has to run. Which, how dare she get pruned inside of a vehicle, of all things?
She has to get up and run. I'm like, I feel like pruning must hurt a little bit. Disintegrating from the center of your chest,
reassembling all of your atoms.
Oh, jeez. And then you got to get up and run. She was bust.
But hey, her mind works very quickly because I'd be like, what?
I'd just be rolling around. What's happening?
Just waking up, stretching.
Are there birds chirping?
As she's running from Elias, she briefly she briefly links with the creature with her enchanting magic and is served with a momentary vision, which is something that we've kind of seen in the trailers a little bit, and we saw a little bit leading up to this point, and it's that like asteroid-y thing in like a cosmic lake.
Yeah, it's like prismatic rocks castle of some sort.
Yeah. I have no idea how to describe this thing, but you guys know.
A vision of colorful dreams.
Sylvie then jumps into an approaching pizza delivery car, which turns out to be driven by Mobius. Yay, Mobius is there, which we knew he was not dead.
I've decided that this episode is also an ode to Pixar movies because we have the little Kevin birds from Up, and now we also have the Pizza Planet truck with instead of a rocket on top, it's just got a big slice of pizza.
Yeah, it's very on the nose of what that car was. What did that pizza delivery person do to get pruned? Or just the car itself? Like
they didn't get the pizza there in 30 minutes or less.
They're like, this car is disgusting. Or they were delivering pineapple pizza, and
there is nothing wrong. I love a little ham and pineapple pizza. And I'm not saying I'm ordering it from like a beautiful pizza restaurant. I'm getting it from Domino's.
I actually think that's the worst one.
Oh, it just fits
It's too sweet from Domino's.
Oof, it's so good.
I will order it from
pieces of pineapple.
I will order it from a nice place.
Hey guys, comment below. What do you think about Hawaiian slices?
But so we now know that this void is just a dumping ground for everyone. It's not just Loki's, but it just seems weird that we're only seeing Loki's in here of this entire place. If this is where time and the prune stuff is supposed to go, is Alioth really eating all of those people that quickly? Because only Lokis are able to survive there, it seems like.
Yeah, it's some sort of acid disintegrating smoke monster. Because if she can connect to it, it has to be alive, right? It's not just a conjured spell of some sort.
Oh yeah, it's conscious for sure.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I'm going to bring up Kang again, but Alioth is directly linked to Kang in the comics. Like, I think Alioth has only had, let's say, 7 appearances in the comics, and every single one has been with Kang. And it is interesting that Alioth in the comics was, kind of stopped Kang from expanding his time empire because it eats temporal energy, so he couldn't expand it.
Oh my gosh! So do you think that Alioth is actually sort of doing good? And it's keeping Kang trapped there.
If it is Kang or whoever it is. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. And I don't know, maybe. But there's just too many signs pointing to Kang, and I really don't want to be disappointed.
We're gonna get bonered.
I think the thing that makes it hard to be like, oh, maybe it is Kang is we know Kang is coming. He's going to be an Ant-Man.
That's very true. Right. That's true.
So, but are they going to really introduce him this early? 2 years early? Maybe.
They're going to release him into the mania in this episode.
So back in the car with Sylvie and Mobius, Sylvie realizes that the cloud itself could be the answer and tells Mobius to turn around. Like, go back towards the cloud. And he's like, I mean, okay. But before that, he did apologize to Sylvie, which I thought was important.
I kind of like this conversation where it's this thing of like, you think you're on a righteous path, but then when you're able to see behind the curtain, you realize that you weren't doing good. And she's like, oh, you thought you were working for the good guys, and yet you hunted me like a dog.
Yeah.
And they kind of go back and forth about what's good and what's right and the reasoning of why we do things. But he does ultimately say, oh, yeah, I'm really sorry about that. That's how you know Mobius is a stand-up guy, okay? He's the Ted Lasso of the series.
I mean,
He's
that's
willing
true.
to say, I'm sorry, and own up to his mistakes.
I would love to have Owen Wilson and Ted Lasso.
Also, mustache. He's got the mustache.
So the Lokis go to approach the smoke monster, or the cloud monster, Alioth. While making their way to Alioth, okay, this is a fun one. Yes, that crashed helicopter with Thanos written across its tail is from the comics, a truly bizarre piece of the late 70s continuity. The Thanos copter, that's actually what it's called, I'm not even kidding, debuted in a short tale in 1979's Spidey Super Stories number. The story was more meant for kids, but it shows, Hellcat and Spider-Man, they were like pretty good friends. He uses a helicopter and he gets like the space cube, which is the Tesseract, but he's flying a yellow helicopter that says Thanos on the side of it.
You'll never find me.
Yeah. Also, why fly in a helicopter? It's probably one of the loudest forms of transportation.
I also picture him in like a business suit for some reason in this helicopter.
No, he literally looks like himself, and he's in a helicopter. It's absolutely ridiculous.
We have your Thanos copter, sir. It's perfect.
But I think it is funny that it's pruned here. We also do see that a giant Yellow Jacket helmet, Ant-Man's first villain. Yellow Jacket, I mean, it's a giant one. I think it's interesting. Maybe that's where he went when he like shrunk all the way down.
Oh.
Who knows? Are they in the quantum realm? There's no telling. We will find out.
We'll never know.
So after they see Alioth consume a destroyer, Loki starts to rethink his charge the villain strategy. I don't think it's really great. Mobius and Sylvie meet up with the 4 Lokis. Loki is happy to see them, which was super sweet. Just like when he was happy to see Sif, he was like, Sylvie, Mobius.
Luckily, this one doesn't end with a kick in the crotch.
True. I mean, they do say goodbye, which was kind of sad. I do like how every time Sylvie finds out about Loki's plan, she always mocks him. And she's like, that's your plan? Wow, okay. Not great. And then Mobius does point out what we were kind of talking about earlier. He's like, throw a rock and hit a Loki here. Apparently, there's just Lokis everywhere. Loki wants to know what Sylvie's plan would be, because apparently his isn't great. She says that she's going to enchant the cloud, and she thinks that it will work as she believes Alioth is a guard dog to the person beyond the void at the end of time. So I think that's what that lake that we're saying, that's like the timeline or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how they depict it in the TVA as well. So it's just a rock with a castle on top sitting at the edge of time.
In a prism lake.
Right. But before we go further with the Lokis, let's go back to the TVA.
Take a small little detour back to the TVA.
Renslayer questions B-15, who has been imprisoned for briefly freeing Sylvie. B-15 wants everyone at the TVA to know about the Timekeepers, which she should. I mean, that's just the right thing to do. They are just mindless androids, these Timekeepers. But Renslayer just wants to know what drives Sylvie. It's just too many different types of what's right and what's wrong. And again, Renslayer is just wanting to find out for herself. She doesn't care about everybody else, which is so weird. Like, why is she so detached from people? Like, wouldn't you think that if she, I don't know, told people, she might be able to get the answers sooner instead of like sneaking?
It feels like it's all about the power for her, right? Like, even think about Mobius. They had all these scenes together where they were in her office, they were sharing drinks. We heard about past adventures. And she's just so quickly willing to prune him.
Yeah. It's not even about protecting things for her.
No.
Which is interesting. And she does like keep all those trophies, which I think is funny. Like, it's really hard to pin her down. Like, is she going to eventually be bad, or is she going to turn a leaf when she finds out?
And I feel like we still don't even know if she's lying. Does she know more than she's saying? Is she hiding it? Is she keeping it close to her chest?
Well, she keeps saying all she talks about is protecting the timeline, TVA, but she's claiming all of that stuff. And as we've seen, especially in this episode, she's not very truthful and she tries to sneak and lie her way through things.
Yeah, it's like, does the timeline ultimately lead to her being the all-powerful one? Is that why she wants to protect it so badly?
There's a story in the comics with Kang and Alioth where after he can't defeat Alioth and kind of held at bay for a minute, there's a character with the same name as Renslayer that takes over, but I don't think that's the route they'll go, but it has happened.
Yeah. It's just interesting because it's like she wants to protect it, yet she doesn't know much about it because she asked Miss Minutes to do more research for her, kind of.
Yeah. I did like the line between B-15 and Renslayer here where B-15 tells her, you only want it and Sylvie needs it.
Mm-hmm.
So Sylvie just has more of that drive and she will literally do anything to get there. And Renslayer is just kind of like, well, I want to know.
Right.
Like, what is driving you to know? I mean, is it just curiosity? That's not really going to get you too far, I was going to say. And then when she leaves that, she's all frustrated. And then she asks Miss Minutes, give me everything on the TV at the beginning of time, all of that. I mean, I guess she can get it. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, so is Miss Minutes just going to listen to whatever Renslayer says? Or does Miss Minutes have some type of firewall or parental controls on her where she's like, no, I can't do any of that?
She's just yeses them to their faces. And then it's like, yeah, I'm working on it. It's going to take a while. Bye.
What do you mean take a while? You're a hologram AI from the future /past /present and
That
all
can
the
exist
time.
in a computer and outside of a computer.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that your processing speeds would be a little faster than that.
Miss Minutes, or should we call you Kang the Minutes Conqueror?
No. We're not claiming that. No. Back in the void, Mobius questions if Gator Loki is actually a variant.
I dare.
Classic. Loki says, well, he's green, isn't he? I mean, so now we know that it's not just survival that makes a Loki, but it's also being green.
Green.
And having green abilities and powers.
As Kermit said, it ain't easy being green, especially if you're a Loki.
Loki and Sylvie at this point are having a kind of cute moment. Again, these scenes with them are kind of interesting, and I can't figure it out. They touch on Mobius' theory about their Nexus event on Lamentis 1, but they prefer to be in denial rather than talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, it's a typical scene with, in high school dramas where the two characters like each other, but they're like, oh yeah, we're just friends. Like, we don't really like each other, but they both know. But it's hard to pin down, like, is this romantic feelings, or is it like, it's just because they actually care about each other?
I'm leaning more towards they actually care about each other, and I still think it goes back to self-acceptance and self-love. It's kind of that thing of like when someone pays you a compliment and you're not willing to take the compliment. They're like, oh my God, you were so good. You're like, no, I wasn't. It's like, for some reason, we have this inability to accept our own good, and it feels like they're not willing to accept that because it feels too uncomfortable to do that.
Well, even just like the simplest niceties, like Loki conjures a blanket for himself and Sylvie's like, it's cold. And then he eventually conjures it around her as well, even after offering, I can make you one yourself, and he puts it around her. So, I mean, even in that situation where he's like, I can do this for you, and she's like, no, I'm okay. They're getting there, but not fully there yet. And I don't want to say this was romantic, because I feel like if it was romantic, there'd be a little something more.
Mm-hmm.
It would feel more romantic.
I'll even admit, like, in this moment, I was waiting for her to put her head on his shoulder.
Right.
And she doesn't.
Right. That's like, it kept feeling like they could be doing a little something more in these scenes to go that way, but they're not.
I feel like you and I are fighting so much for this to be self-acceptance and self-love, and in the end, it's going to end with a giant slobbery smooch or something like that. And we're going to be like, oh no.
I'm just going to like believe in the director, because she even said, she was like, it's not necessarily romantic. I don't necessarily know what that means.
Right.
But I'm holding out that it's not just, oh, they're going to fall in love with each other.
Right.
Stuff like that. I mean, the Loki series poses a pretty interesting situation or scenario in itself, is that you have all these different versions of yourself. But the most important thing is that each part of yourself is good or better at certain things, but you just need to love yourself. And that's what I feel like most of this is. And it just happens that a part of you is a badass enchantress. So
That one you should love the most.
right. There's clearly feelings there. So we'll see where this
Besties.
goes.
They're besties.
Sylvie wonders, how do I know you won't betray me in the final moments? And Loki is quite upfront about the truth, noting that he has betrayed everyone that he's ever known, which isn't necessarily the most convincing. It doesn't inspire confidence at all. But he says, that's not who I am anymore, essentially. So it's cool that he's owning up to that and that he's still telling Sylvie, like, you should see what I talk about or how I am when you're not around. I miss you. I love you. I'll do anything for you.
If I had a cell phone, I would text you.
And this does call back to Mobius saying, like, it's never too late to change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that resonates with a lot of the Lokis. And also, nobody's probably told them that. They're always just like, this is who you are. You're always going to be shitty. Blah, blah, blah.
It's just so sad, right? Because this is technically a variant Loki from the MCU sacred timeline of the movies. So he's going to do all of this personal growth, and then we don't really know what happens to him.
Yeah, that's another big question for this is, what does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is Loki just going to be, I don't know, ruling Earth? Because they talk in this conversation, like, what are we going to do afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I don't know, find a timeline for you to rule. Which he's like, yeah, doesn't really seem like he wants to do that because Sylvie doesn't know what she wants to do. But then Loki's like, maybe we'll figure out together, which is super sweet. But it's just not clear what,
right.
Can
you imagine, though, being Sylvie from when you're like, 9 years old, you've been planning revenge until this point. Your whole life has been driven by revenge. And then you are finally sort of at the end of that journey. You're like, oh, wait, what do I do now?
Well, right. I mean, that's what do you do? I mean,
right.
Are you going to be fulfilled? I think a lot of times that's a big tell of like, you're probably not going to be fulfilled if you don't know what you're going to do afterwards. Like, if you have a feeling you'd be happy, you'd probably be like, be on a beach somewhere and be happy, But the fact that she's like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. You just like, that's your one true driving force for this. So I don't know.
And Loki's just sort of feel like they can't sit still.
I mean, not
right.
at all.
So
they
like,
have to be doing something.
They're on a quest and then they finish the quest and they just need something else to quest about.
So they start enacting their final plan. Sylvie plans to do this alone, but Loki says, I'm staying with you. You go, I go. Kid Loki hands Loki his golden dagger, which is a very long dagger. I'm just going to say, I don't think that's a dagger. Like, comment below if you know the length size, but what makes it a sword or a dagger. Because
is this a dwarf?
This thing was like 2 feet long.
He magicked it. He magicked it.
It's also gold. It's really pretty. Mobius is returning to the TVA to burn it to the ground, and he has a touching goodbye with Loki. They hug, which was super sweet. They both close their eyes when they hug. I was like, oh.
Yeah. Loki says, thank you, my friend. And then Mobius says, you're my favorite.
To Sylvie.
Oh, he says it over his shoulder?
Yeah, he says it to Sylvie.
But we all really know that that's him showing his love to Loki.
So that leaves Alioth to Loki and Sylvie. As a cloud monster cheese. As the cloud monster approaches, they realize they might not be able to wait for a variant branch. Loki takes it upon himself with his fiery dagger to create a distraction so Sylvie can enchant Alioth. But the moment she tries to link with Alioth, it ignores Loki and turns towards her. Lo and behold, classic Loki shows up to lend a hand.
Oh, yes.
He creates an entire Asgard with his projection abilities.
It's incredible.
It's very detailed. It's amazing. Alioth tries to devour it, giving Sylvie a little bit more time to do her thing. Do you think that he got so good at illusions because he was by himself for so long that he's able to just create Asgard?
Friends.
Well, he created his home.
Yeah.
Because he was probably because at this point, Asgard was destroyed. So it would make sense he would create his home to at least kind of be around it.
I also think this shows
sad.
him, while you have all been playing with daggers, you fools, look at what you could have been doing, creating whole worlds.
I like the little detail on there with the lightning from it. And it reminds me of Thor. So it's kind of cute that he.
An ode to Thor.
An ode to Odin and Thor.
And Thor and Thor.
Yeah, it was really. I also do want to say, so Grant, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic as classic Loki. I know I kind of made a joke at the costume in the past episode. Again, I did not know the importance of the part he was going to be playing in this episode, but it did grow on me. It kind of shows that like having this costume a little bit longer and seeing it being taken seriously is like, yeah, it still looks kind of cheap, but I buy it.
Well, I think that's also sort of the point of the character, right? Is that he's in this like very cheesy, like 60s costume, but yet he's so powerful.
Right.
Right. And so you're kind of like blindsided by like, oh my God, this looks terrible. But you're like, oh, wait, he's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that we're sort of thrown off by the look of it, but really his power is there.
You know, I love the cape. I love the horns. I love everything about it. But it's really the underwear on the outside that just throws me off.
I agree. And there's something about like the head underwear that's sort of there. Because like, why is it not all the horns?
That's
like,
how it was in the comics.
It's like a hood with horns on top of it.
I think what it was supposed to depict, at least in the comics, because later when that iteration of Loki is drawn in more modern times, it's like that is a different color. Like this is like his horns are gold.
Oh, true.
And then this. So it kind of feels like, well, he's directly coming from the 60s and that's how it looked. It was like one color weirdness. But it was weird. It's like, also, I want to say him keeping the horns on, like while he's like moving around and doing magic and stuff. I'm like, those things must be on point.
He magicked them to his head.
To stick.
Yeah.
Never come off, always stay.
Also, I want to say that I am a little disappointed that we didn't get long ponytail Loki. You know, like classic Loki that always has like that long ponytail coming out of the back of his head? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe he's in that castle. We'll see.
He's probably one of the people with handlebar Loki.
One of the marauders.
Yeah. Or cannibal marauders and...
Gang of Lokis.
Cannibal pirates. What did they say? Okay. In this scene, before Kid Loki leaves, he had some device. Was he using it to track...
It was like a barometer
thing.
They did not speak of it. He just had it.
Yeah.
When they were walking
like,
up the
beep,
hill.
Boop, beep, boop, and he
had
like
a long antenna.
Following it. It's so weird.
He had an Aliothometer.
It's not necessary, apparently, for us to know. Just to have it.
Maybe there was a scene where he was telling them about it and they cut it. It was weird that he just had it.
It was pretty odd.
One more thing about this scene is that right before they're going to face Alioth, we see Loki sort of take a step back. And for a second, just for a second, my heart jumped and I thought, he's going to run away. He's going to betray her. But what he ends up doing is he comes behind her and then he puts his hand on her shoulder.
Right.
And it's like, we're in this together. We're going to do this.
Yeah, that's cute.
I really like that.
She ends up persuading Loki to try and enchant it with her. He says he doesn't know how, but Sylvie says, you do, we are the same, which is kind of interesting. And I think she's realizing their connection. Mm-hmm. They close their eyes and use all their might. Classic Loki has done all that he can. He's consumed with one final glorious purpose, which I think is a baller way to go out. I'm just going to say, and for some reason, only his horns survive. Because they can never be destroyed.
The metal, the magic metal of the horns.
Or this Alioth character just likes to leave trophies everywhere.
Maybe he just doesn't like the taste of the horns.
Could be. I mean, there's just like, if you look in the background during this episode, you see so much like Easter eggs. You see Ronan the Conqueror's ship there. You see Shield Hellcarrier there. You see the Living Tribunal's head there, which is this huge, big, giant, cosmic, spacey entity in the comics. It's like 3-headed. It has like kind of like the whole face covered, eyes covered. Yeah, that's there as well. So it's like this Alioth has been like eaten.
And it also feels like Marvel being like, you're never going to see this. You're never going to see this. You're never going to see this. It's all been destroyed.
There you go. That's the only time you're going to see it.
Right, exactly.
Have fun.
At least you were holding out for the Living Tribunal. This is it, sucker.
Yo, I hope Throg is in... That'd be cool.
He's just in a bottle.
That's the only and first and only appearance of Throg in the MCU. I want a Pet Avengers so bad. There is a comic called Pet Avengers. Read it. It's great. It's kind of funny, but it's really good.
It was the Beast Wars before Beast Wars.
So Alioth then swarms the enchanting squad. It stops, turns green right on time. It's done.
Yay!
As a cloud and smoke clears, turns out it's not the Emerald City in there, but there's some type of cosmic tiny little castle looking place on top of this asteroid rock at the edge of time. Loki and Sylvie walk towards it, hand in hand. Who could be in this castle?
Y'all, we have one episode left.
I want to say, I felt like this at WandaVision, and I feel like they wrapped it up well.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's still so much that needs to be done. I mean, all of these character storylines need to have an ending because they're all going towards something. I'm sure B-15 is going to have some part in the finale as well. That's why she's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Renslayer, Mobius, Sylvie, and Loki both have to. We also don't know what Sylvie's Nexus event was, which I think is a pretty big answer or question to have an answer to. I'm sure she's going to get it when she's here. I hope it's just because she was happy.
Oh, gosh.
Or she saw herself as a hero in the story. Because, I mean, that would be fine. Because, we saw her playing with that story and she kind of put herself in the hero position. And she was playing with toys. I don't know if Loki had toys, but I would assume he did have toys when he was growing up. Because he's not, they didn't treat him that badly.
He was still a royal.
Right. So I'm really curious to see. And I hope it's not just because she's a woman, because that's pretty fucked up.
Messed up, because she seems maybe one of the more powerful ones.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Obviously.
Mm-hmm. Craziness. I think the thing I'm most nervous about is that they're holding hands. They're walking towards their destinies, but it seems like it's going to end or something. Something bad is going to happen to one of them. And, they get you attached to these characters, but what's going to happen to them? Because this technically, we don't know how time works there. So this could be past all the Thanos stuff that happened in the MCU timeline.
Yeah. Loki says to the other Lokis, like, he doesn't know how long it's necessarily been since New York. Because, I mean, remember, this is Loki, like, first Avengers Loki. But I guess we can assume that all of this stuff happened.
Right.
Like Infinity War and Endgame and all that stuff. But maybe not. I mean, maybe he does go back to the next time we see him in the MCU after Avengers, and he knows the destiny that has to play out. I don't know.
Or have we seen Tom Hiddleston on the set of Love and Thunder?
No.
Oh, crap.
Yeah.
Because I was like, maybe like this Loki variant goes back into that timeline or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the movies going forward are going to be really interesting because I think a lot of them, if not all of them, are playing with the multiverse and timelines.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And it feels like those Avengers that we did lose in those last two movies are going to be gone.
Right.
Like Black Widow, Captain America, or Steve Rogers, I should say. They're done.
Yeah.
And Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Stony
Stark. You can't forget about Stony Stark.
Anthony Stark. Like, so they're done. And we have to sort of accept that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Loki included.
No.
I know.
He just got a TV show. That'd be so weird.
I know.
No.
He has his own title card, people.
I don't.
Adventures of Loki and
I don't
Sylvie.
hear that.
Okay. He says he does not accept what I just said.
No.
Okay, and that's how we're going into the day.
Like, I feel like Tony Stark and Captain America had great endings. I want to say the first whole Infinity Saga was really about them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the whole through line was really them. They had their run. That's great. I feel like a lot of these characters haven't yet. Loki could definitely use a bit more. Also, he's an Asgardian. They go through Ragnarok and they get reborn again. So I can't see him not being around and Thor still being around.
Listen. First of all, I don't need to be yelled at. Second of all, I agree with you. I don't want anything to happen to him.
Well,
I want more Loki. I'm just saying I'm erring on the side of caution for my own self-preservation.
okay, that's fine. Whatever. Derek survived too, I guess, just like Loki's.
What timeline is this?
A Bite Of has broken up. I'm just kidding.
This is the last episode. We're not even going to be covering the last episode of Loki, okay?
Yeah, right.
We are not holding hands into the sunset or into the Prism Lake or whatever the hell is happening next. Let us cleanse the palate of this terrifying conversation that we've just had with a special segment. That's right. It's time for OMTG.
No, you can't do Edwards.
OMTG. So you might know Maui, the trickster god from the Polynesian Islands, from his appearance in Disney's Moana. But did you know he was crushed to death?
No.
More on that later.
No. Wait. Okay.
Born from parents Ru and Buataranga, depending on the legend, Maui can be a god or sometimes a mere mortal. In most of his stories, he is usually using his cunning to help humans. He lifted the Polynesian islands from the sea with a fishhook and even raised the sky from a mere 6.5 feet to where we know it now. You know, up.
Wait, 6.5 feet?
Yeah, so like all the humans had to like crouch down because the sky was so low. And then he turned into a giant human and he pushed the sky all the way
So
up.
is he saying that there's only, like, people aren't taller than 6.5 feet because they're
I mean, maybe.
Oh.
And then that's why they end up in the Guinness Book of World Records when they do, because their head would have gone through the sky. So, unfortunately, of course, as many a god do, they are on a quest for immortality. His mother told him the only way to get everlasting life was to kill the goddess of death.
Or have an everlasting gobstopper.
Or eat those peaches in the monkey kingdom. Anyway. Thank you, everybody who remembered the song that we were trying to remember in our last episode, which was Peaches by the Presidents of the United States.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, why do people keep mentioning this Peaches song? I legitimately forgot we talked about that. And I was like, what? Did we talk about Peaches? And he was like, yeah, we were trying to figure out the song. I was like, oh.
Millions of peaches.
But that was exactly the song. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So thank you so much. To continue with our story. While the goddess was sleeping, Maui turned into a lizard and crawled inside her ear. She woke up and felt something inside her, so she contracted all of her muscles and crushed him.
Okay.
Thus ending his quest for immortality and also damning all of humans to not be immortal, because there was like a little thing, like if he did it, if he killed the goddess of death, then all humans would be immortal.
Oh.
So it was a failure.
Wait, so he got crushed,
Lizard crushed.
but inside somebody?
Yeah, he crawled into the goddess of death's head and then was in her body trying to kill her. And then she woke up and she went, "Huggaga!" and she crushed him.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some, like, muscle control.
She's the goddess of death.
I mean,
Of course. She could use her body to kill something.
okay.
It's what she do.
Okay.
Well, anyway, you seem to be having the same reaction because that fate had me saying, OMTG.
Oh, poor Maui. How far will you go? Up into her ear and dying.
You're welcome.
How far will you go? It's
And then You're Welcome is also a song from Moana.
Oh!
See, I played off you. We had a back and forth. You missed it.
Shiny is one of the best songs in that whole movie.
Yes.
so
Shiny!
Just saying.
Yeah.
All right. Goodbye, guys.
Bye. Thanks for listening to A Bite Of, artwork and editing by our own Noah. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at A Bite Of Pod and on Facebook at A Bite Of. If you have questions, recommendations, or just want to say hi, you can email us at abiteofpod@gmail.com. You can find us on all podcast platforms. Please be sure to rate and review to spread the word. Hope you join us next time on A Bite Of. Bye.